You remember this old joke, right? Check it out. Power Rangers star Walter Emmanuel Jones denies racism behind his Black Ranger casting. Quote, calling it a mistake would dismiss the impact it had on countless people. Now, again, this comes out of Tony Oliver, a former showrunner of Power Rangers, coming out and saying, yeah, that was a mistake. We probably shouldn't have done that. Now, you remember the old joke about this, that the Black Ranger's black and that the Yellow Ranger's yellow. Well, did you catch that one? It was kind of quick. Yeah, the Yellow Ranger's Asian. That's the joke, right? That's the joke, is that it's racism to cast them that way. When in reality, the racism isn't to interpret it that way. That's the racism, okay? Because if we go down like assigning colors to races like this, pretty soon nobody can wear anything. I can't wear a black shirt because I'm this color. I can only walk around wearing tied white, tied ad white. That's all I can wear. It's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. And it's also really dismissing the impact that Power Rangers as a whole had on the world. Now, I'm one of those guys that didn't come up with Mighty Morphin, all right? I was a whole 3 years old when Mighty Morphin took over the world, okay? Everything that made that franchise gigantic was something that existed long before I kind of like rose up to realizing how cool the Power Rangers were, okay? What Walter's talking about in this interview that we're going to listen to in a minute here is the reality that at that time, there were not a lot of black superheroes. Now, I'm not making the case that this was done to justify that, to even the scales, but Walter explains the importance of why that was happening and why he was happy to have the role that he did, wearing the suit that he did, and the reasoning behind it. Now, I'm going to take you over to that interview now, and we'll talk about his Instagram post here in just a minute. So let's check in with Walter and hear what he has to say about this. Here he is. Hold it! It looks like 73% of you watching this aren't subscribed. Time to click that button. You know where to find it.
And growing up in a black city and then becoming a black superhero in a black suit, I was like,
forget about it.
Oh man, this
ding,
is
ding, 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 ding,
let's
ding.
go. This is perfect for me.
Yeah.
So this is how he responded.
Yeah, no kidding.
Now,
So this is how Walter responded when he walked in. He tells us in this interview, I believe this is with Jim, who's this Jim? Jim Cummings. Yeah, this is with Jim Cummings. And so I believe that during, what he says here anyway, during this interview, I'm sorry, I tried to figure out that name. Jim Cummings is talking to him about this whole situation. He's got a guest on. They're kind of going through this whole thing. And what Walter explains is that when he first walked into the dressing room that explained where these characters were and what they were doing, is that he chose the Black Ranger suit because it attracted him. Not because he was like, I'm a black guy, got to be in the black suit. Nope, that was not a reason. He just found the suit to be attractive. And in fact, as he was reading through the casting call and what the purpose of the Black Ranger was, he liked the idea of being effectively the second in command on screen. Because when you think about it, Billy's not going to be the guy that steps up. Not at all. So what ended up happening is that Walter ended up creating this very unique identity for Zack within the Power Rangers, which, again, he goes on to explain right here.
For people to be able to grow up with me and go, oh, he is as equal to any other Ranger. And in fact, stands out because he has his own style of martial arts and he's also cool and got swag.
Yeah,
I
he's
was
a
happy about
badass.
that. Yeah, he's a badass.
Yeah, that's
And
So,
that's,
yeah, so
that helps.
yeah, exactly. I'm like,
and so that's what happened here, is that Walter created a unique character as an actor, with the help of the writers, obviously, and the showrunners, to create Zack into being a pretty unique black superhero for daytime television. It was pretty unheard of at the time. Go back and look at this time period. Not a lot of people were trying to entertain the idea of a black superhero, even part of a team. There just wasn't that kind of a push to create that live action daytime hero. And yet here he is right here. I would argue that Zack's character liberated the market to bring Static Shock into an animated series. You can feel a bit of Zack in how Virgil conducts himself. Not in the way he moves, but the way he communicates, because Zack's character, as played by Walter, is very quippy. He's quick on his feet and side of his head. You know, he's real smart aleck. He's got that Spider-Man make fun of the villains kind of attitude, which again, many of the Power Rangers did, but of course, mixed with Zack's move and his attitude, became pretty unique unto himself. Which is what I mean when I say that he likely inspired how Static Shock was represented in the animated series. I can't imagine how Milestone Comics took a look at Zack the Power Ranger and said they couldn't be inspired by that. There are people today that speak about Walter's performance that look like me and think he's the greatest of the Power Rangers. Now, again, I'm not a Zack fan. I don't hate Zack. He's just not a character that I get down with. He's cool. He's fun. He's just not the one I relate to the most. I relate to the White Ranger Tommy, not the bad guy Tommy that was the Green Ranger losing his powers. I relate to the White Ranger Tommy, not because of this, nice try, but because we share a namesake and because I wanted to live up to the standard that character set. That's all. That's it. And for a lot of kids out there, I guarantee you that was their perception of Zack as well. That it wasn't that he was black, it's that they felt that he best represented what their morality was and how they wanted to conduct themselves in the world. And I'm not saying Zack was opposite to Tommy. It's just Tommy's way of communicating what he did and how he did it was resonated with me more than it resonated from Zack. And that's just how it went. Now let's check out Walter's Instagram post about this. And he says, "It's incredible how many media outlets picked up on this. However, while some choose to seek out the negative, I've always believed in focusing on the positive." What do you know, a Power Ranger actor thinking about the positive future. How about that? "I understand the impulse to address what might be seen as cultural insensitivity, but calling it a mistake would dismiss the impact it had on countless people around the world who found inspiration and representation in TV's first black superhero." I don't know about that one. I can't guarantee that that's the truth on that one. I could be. Again, I'm not up on who was live action. I don't know. I don't know if you count Urkel's superhero as being. Did Urkel superhero? Didn't Urkel have a superhero alter ego? He had the slick guy, the cool guy. But I want to say Urkel had a superhero alter ego as well. But again, I'm not trying to parse hairs. I'm just trying to say that, like, as far as I know, that's true. But again, I can't verify that 100%. But he's right that there weren't a lot around at the time. Morphin into none other than the Black Ranger. It wasn't a mistake. It was a milestone. It was an honor. And he goes on to talk about that interview that we just watched, okay? Now, I'll put the link down to Mr. Cummings' interview with Walter. You can listen to it in its entirety there and find out how he lost his finger. But you guys just remember out there, the original message of the Power Rangers was that nobody was different from each other. Now, I know that's a very threadbare thing to say these days, but when they were talking about it, it wasn't trying to play the oppression Olympics, that you are supposed to lower yourself down. No. This equal thing was meant to be that you have to raise yourself up. You have to aspire to be like a Power Ranger. They weren't just a group of kids. They were kids that were active in their community, trying to improve it in any method they could find. Now, that's how this thing is supposed to operate in our minds, especially as kids. We receive these as aspirational superheroes. I talked about trying to live up to the standard that Tommy set, right? Similarly, a lot of kids probably had the same idea about Zack. And that's the problem when we go back and we try to analyze these things and say, oh no, they were wrong because color coordinated to racial expression. There's nothing yellow about Trini. Nothing. Zack, black in the way that we like to call black people black, there's nothing to do with his skin tone. That's the problem with a lot of this, is that we get wrapped up in racial identity and then we start throwing it onto kid stuff and it has nothing to do with it. It's just not how people view the world natively. It really isn't. And that's why Power Rangers has had such an impact over the world, why it's only recently fallen away, well, harder than it had been, because they pushed so hard into this racial identity thing, into this self-identity thing, rather than the team dynamics that made the show so important and unique. If you think about the time period, there were not a lot of television shows for children that showed a bunch of teenagers with attitude getting along. There were a lot of shows on television that showed a bunch of teenagers fighting with each other and having interpersonal drama and dating each other and breaking up with each other and getting into shenanigans with the principal. But there weren't a lot of shows that said, hey, you can be more than just another taxpayer, you know? You, the average person, no superhero, no superpowers. You're not from another planet. You don't have magic. You don't have billions of dollars to build a jet shaped like some flying animal in the night. No. You're just a teenager with an attitude, and you've been handed a device that allows you to balance the scales of justice. I don't know how that's not cool. I don't know how that's not cool to anybody, no matter what you look like in the mirror. And that's what Walter's talking about here. This whole thing had absolutely nothing to do with the skin color of him. They weren't thinking about that. They were thinking about the miracle of what this show could offer children. The miracle of what showing all these people working together toward an aspirational goal could do for the consciousness of America at that time. We all look back in the 90s like, woo, wahoo, lots of music, MTV, P. Diddy wasn't so weird at that time. Yeah, right? No. The world was not in really great shape. The Soviet Union had just collapsed. Peace was still an iffy thing. We weren't sure if they were going to come back in part 2. The Soviet Union part 2. You know, we weren't sure about that. We weren't sure if they were going to detonate Chernobyl to try and get more revenge on the last way out, like some supervillain in a movie, okay? There's a lot of things going on. Cuba was still a mess. Mexico was still a mess. Canada was going through an economic crisis. It wasn't great all over the world at that time. America was doing pretty well. But we were trying to pitch an aspirational future. And that's what Walter talks about here. Is he shows, in that interview, he explained that he showed kids around the world, it didn't matter what you looked like, you had a place on the team. And all it took, really, the only qualifying factor to get on that damn team was to have a courageous heart. And that's the message that needs to come back to children's entertainment. That needs to come back to how we communicate the idea of heroism across the board. Enough with these flawed assholes. Enough with these self-absorbed weirdos in capes. Enough. We need to go back to courageous hearts that self-sacrifice, that are ready to take on the world no matter what they look like, no matter how many team members they have, even if their back is against the wall by themselves. That's the kind of heroes that we need. Those heroes right here, the Power Rangers. Now, you laugh. You tear back that spandex, you tear back the giant robots, and you look at the core of what that show was trying to talk to us about. It's all right there, just what I explained. But as always, guys, you'll have to let me know what you think about this down in the comments below. Is it morphin' time? Let me know down in the comments below. And as always, guys, may the power protect you.